Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Ben Crossman, and everyone out there, how you doing? I hope you're doing well and you're ready for some Computer America. So first things first, we're doing computer and technology news for the hour. Everyone, I hope that you're ready for it. We have tons and tons of news stories, everything ranging from a lot about Tesla. There's some stuff about the Electronic Frontier Foundation, and talking about AT&T selling data to bounty hunters, and so much more. So it's going to be a fun, information-packed hour. Everyone, before we get started, first things first, computeramerica.com. That's where you'll find everything, including the show notes. It will have the podcast. It will have links to any articles that we do, any videos that we show, anything and everything that we talk about can be found at computeramerica.com. And on top of that, be sure to check out our podcast if you miss any of today's show. Of course, we appreciate it when you listen to us live on IRN. But on top of that, hey, there are plenty of ways to consume Computer America. So with that being said, everyone, let's go ahead and get started with computer and technology news. And one last time, I hope you're having a great day. So here we go. Now, as I said before, there are tons of different stories, and I'm going to try to lump them together as best I can. Why don't we go ahead and start with this one? This is something that we've been hearing the possibilities of for quite a while now, and it looks like someone finally took the initiative and, well, actually designed a way to make it happen. And by the way, this is a very scary reality. It hasn't been a reality. It's been a very scary theory, but now it looks like the time has come. Now, what I'm talking about is that hackers made an app that kills to prove a point, and this has to work with insulin pumps. So obviously the Internet of Things, if you listen to any of our segments with many of our correspondents or just news segments, or even with Ralph Bond last Friday, we like to cover the Internet of Things and medical Internet of Things because medicine and technology work together very, very well. Having the hands-off approach, having things that you implant once and then monitor and react in real time, as opposed to potentially waiting between doctor visits or having to, continuously monitor someone with a person. It's much more effective treatment. It's much more immediate treatment. But at the same time, that immediacy, when you connect it to the internet, has its own risks. And one of the risks that we have heard about is, how are we so sure that the only people accessing these devices, be it a pacemaker, be it an insulin pump, be it, any of these other high-tech devices that we're putting into our bodies now, how are we so sure that the only people accessing them are are really the doctors who are in charge of keeping people alive. And now we have this article here from Wired saying that 2 years ago, researchers, oh, and by the way, this is, as I said, Wired and Ms. Lily Hay Newman, saying that 2 years ago, researchers Billy Rios and Jonathan Butts discovered disturbing vulnerabilities in Medtronic's popular MiniMed and MiniMed Paradigm insulin pump lines. An attacker could remotely target these pumps to withhold insulin from patients or to trigger a potentially lethal overdose. And yet, months of negotiation with Medtronic and regulators to implement a fix proved fruitless, so the researchers resorted to drastic measures. They built an Android app, and that's the scary thing because Android is faulty at best. So the fact that it has someone's life in an Android app, not the best sign, that could use the flaws to potentially kill people. So the two security researchers who work at a security firm, QED Security Solutions, had first raised awareness back in August 2018 with a widely publicized talk back at Black Hat. Black Hat, we've covered on the show before. It's a very, very large, essentially hackers convention. And they talk about, just kind of the state of the industry. And really, a lot of people go there to show off what they've been working on. It's almost informal to a point, but it's very real what they talk about. So they mentioned alongside the presentation, the Food and Drug Administration and Department of Homeland Security warned affected customers about the vulnerabilities. Medtronic itself didn't publish a security bulletin until March 2019, and no one presented a plan to fix or replace the devices. So to spur a full replacement program, which ultimately went into effect at the end of June, the researchers wanted to convey the true extent of the threat, saying, quote, "We've essentially just created a universal remote for every one of these insulin pumps in the world. I don't know why Medtronic waits for researchers to create an app that could hurt or kill someone before they actually start to take this seriously. Nothing has changed between when we gave our Black Hat talk and 3 weeks ago." And by the way, again, these insulin pumps are, they're going through a replacement program. So anyone who has one of these, that were implanted for, for the prior years, you can go get a new one. But the app itself is, of course, very real and very dangerous. So just real quick, we're going to breeze through what the app actually does and how they did it, and then probably move on. But first things first, the killer app saying that diabetes patients usually manage their own insulin intake. Well, in the case of MiniMed pumps, they use buttons on a device to administer insulin doses, known as boluses. Who knew? MiniMed pumps also come with a remote control, which basically looks like a key car fob, which you can see here on the video portion. But as they discovered, it's relatively easy to determine the radio frequency on which the remote pump talks to each other. Worse, those communications aren't encrypted, meaning that the researchers were able to essentially scan the device, match up the signal, and then of course send out any signals that they wanted to, and the pump would just receive it like anyone else. There was no kind of check to make sure that the signal that they were going to receive was actually coming from a certified MiniMed remote or fob. So they mentioned after establishing the initial contact, hackers can control the radio through a simple smartphone app to launch attacks, similar to apps that fill in for your television remotes, which is essentially the same thing. It seems like, and this is what happens so often with connected devices and these smart devices when it comes to medicine or Internet of Things, they take well-established, cheap standards, where in this case it was radio frequency. It could have just as easily been Bluetooth or any of these others. And security is at such a far place in their mind. It's, hey, does it work? Yes, but they don't ask, does it, is it secure? Does it work well? And that doesn't matter as long as it works. And by the way, this is probably the cheapest option. Very reliable, but at the same time, open to hacking. They said that the attack is limited to the general range of the remote. It can't be executed from miles away, but the researchers note that with signal boosting equipment, you can cover a larger radius, perhaps a few yards instead of a few feet. Obviously, if you know where someone is going to be, if you happen to see someone, dining at a restaurant, or they are out in a public space, if you see that they have one of these, then hey, potentially you could download the app and control it. Just kind of walk in their general direction, and you would then have essentially their life in your hands. Very, very dangerous stuff. So with that being said, they said that there's no protection. If you reverse engineer the signal, you can send your own signal clean enough for the pump to receive. You've now turned yourself into a key fob for an insulin pump. There you go. So with that being said, the article goes on for quite a bit, and I think we're going to go ahead and leave it there. We'll link it in the show notes, but yeah, this is a warning for, of course, for MiniMed insulin pumps, but this goes for really everything, because you can be assured that there are going to be artificial organs, there are going to be pacemakers, there are going to be more insulin pumps from other providers. Just because MiniMed was the one that got in trouble with this, and they very inappropriately handled a security flaw, doesn't mean that they are going to be the only one who are going to do this. I'm sure that this is going to affect anything that is implanted inside the body. Security, and again, cybersecurity is just not really the point. If your main mission is to get people insulin so that they can continue to live, your thoughts on cybersecurity, they should be there, but they're just not. So, this is a reality that not only medicine is going to have to set up and take notice of, but everyone from car manufacturers to light bulb manufacturers to appliance manufacturers, front door, doorbell manufacturers, everyone, they are now in the cybersecurity business, whether you like it or not. So there you go. It's very, very interesting. So that was our first article. Let's go ahead and breeze on through. So, okay. How about security to security? And this one being about Tesla, and actually from samcurry.net, which is the personal blog of a security researcher, and how he mentioned that he broke his windshield on his Tesla and earned $10,000 from the bug bounty program, which should pay for that cracked windshield, I suppose. So again, this is his personal blog, but one of the more interesting things that he's had the opportunity to hack is a Tesla Model 3. It has a built-in web browser, free premium LTE, and over-the-air software updates. It's a network-connected computer on wheels that drives really fast. Well, and he goes back to April of 2019, saying that early this year, I decided to purchase one and had the absolute blast in both messing with it and driving it. And he said that I've spent way too long sitting in the garage trying to make it do things it's not supposed to, but luckily got something interesting out of it. Saying that he spent time messing with the car's name your vehicle functionality. This allowed you to set a nickname for your car and would save the information to your account so that you could see it on on the mobile app whenever you've received a push notification. Essentially saying, let's just call it Doris. Doris has finished charging, that kind of thing. Initially, he named the car %X period, %X period, %X period to see if it was vulnerable to format string attacks like the 2011 BMW 330i was, but sadly, it really didn't do anything. Which, by the way, in the article, he even provides some great tweets and images and things like that. Looks like Tesla was not vulnerable to format string attack. After spending more time messing with the input, he saw that the allowed content length for the input was very long. So he decided to try his XSS Hunter, which is Cascade. No, it's CSS. XSS, I'm sure, is for inputs on web pages and things like that. But anyways, an XSS Hunter payload, and continued toying around with the functionality of the car. Saying that the other thing that he spent a lot of time messing with was the built-in web browser. He couldn't find anything that evening, so he called it quits and set his car name to a blind XSS payload. So he mentioned during a road trip, he cracked his windshield, which, hey, you can see here. And he used the Tesla app support to set up an appointment and continue driving. The day after, he received a text message with the issue saying that someone was looking into it. He checked his XSS Hunter and saw something really interesting. And he actually redacted the Tesla Motor webpage, but he said that one of the agents responded to my cracked windshield. It fired up the vulnerability that he had put in there, or at least the payload, from within the context of TeslaMotor.com, saying that the screenshot attached to the Hunter showed that the page was used to see the vital statistics of the vehicle and was accessed via an incremental vehicle ID in the URL. The referrer head had my vehicle's VIN number as an argument, saying that it had fired on a dashboard used for managing Tesla vehicles, and there was a current information about his car in the attached Hunter screenshot and more. So he was able to essentially, any information that Tesla was able to pull from his car, he was then able to intercept and, kind of take it. Additionally, there were tabs about firmware, CAN viewers, geofence locations, configurations, and code-named functionalities that sounded interesting, which, by the way, he showed here, but he redacted them all. So, with that being said, he actually reported to the bug bounty program, and they pushed out a hotfix within 12 hours, which, by the way, as opposed to the previous security flaw that we talked about with the insulin pumps, that took about a year to even address or actually acknowledge. This one took about 12 hours from Tesla, so that's good. And he said that he was unable to reproduce it. In about 2 weeks, they paid out the $10,000 bounty and confirmed my suspicion that it was a serious issue. Because obviously, if he could put it as his car name, and then anyone with a Tesla could then report the issue and then gain access to Tesla servers, yeah, that's obviously that's bad. So he said that I didn't attempt this, but it was likely that by incrementing the ID sent to the Vitals endpoint, an attacker could pull and modify information about other cars. Obviously, if you knew the car address and you knew the VIN number, that kind of thing, you could probably weasel your way through Tesla servers into other customers' data. Definitely not a good thing. So, with that being said, very, very cool article and great sleuthing by Sam Curry. I just found that very interesting and very, very happy that Tesla was able to, that they were able to fix it in such a timely manner. So there you go. Now, why don't we go ahead and and we have a couple stories about Tesla and Elon Musk, and so we're going to go ahead and try to, leapfrog this. Let's go ahead and talk about this one from TechCrunch. Let's see. Talking about Tesla in the Model 3. How about this? They have said, they're going to. Tesla drops the standard range Model S and Model X and lowers the price of the long range variants and Model 3. So essentially, if you weren't really familiar with how they do it, they have the standard range and then, of course, the long range version. The standard range had a range of I think about 200, and then the long range had about 250 to 300 in certain models. And obviously, the only difference really was they would essentially throttle your battery a bit, and in a lot of cases, if you wanted the longer range variant, in some models, like I think the Model 3, you had to go back and, actually upgrade it. But for a lot, it was just simply a software tweak. And so a lot of these are just software tweaks, and hey, that's a good thing. They mentioned that the change means that it's now more expensive overall to get into either all-electric Model S sedan or the Model X SUV, but the automakers also lowered the price of the new entry-level long-range variants and dropped the starting price of the Model 3 to $38,990. What a steal. Still very expensive. But hey, it's better than it used to be. So they've standardized the global vehicle lineup, and they are essentially just having one type of model instead of standard and long range. Now all of them are just long range, which I guess are now standard. Reducing the number of model variants at the top end of Tesla's lineup should help it minimize cost and focus high-end buyer appetite on trim levels with greater profit potential for the automaker. And of course, the upside of gains there can be applied beneficially to the cost of the Model 3, which is increasingly the source of the automaker's growth. Which makes a lot of sense, because when you have a $90,000 Model S and you have like a $70,000 Model X, then yeah, the $38,000 Model 3 is probably going to be the vehicle that you sell the most of. Now, Tesla's second quarter vehicle delivery were the highest on record, totaling just under 100,000 vehicles, with the most affordable car in the lineup, again the Model 3, accounting for about 80% of the overall mix. So there you go. Just a little bit of change for, a lot of people out there. I'm sure that if you already have a Tesla, you're kicking yourself for, not waiting a little bit longer. If you're looking to get into a Tesla, then hey, they're expensive, and this hopefully helps a little bit. Now, let's see. No, I really don't want to do that one. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and skip the next one and move on to our next topic that is not Mark Zuckerberg, or not Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk or Tesla. Although we do have one about Mark Zuckerberg. And this is one that we avoided yesterday. Might as well get into it. Talking about Mark Zuckerberg, obviously, Facebook, actually got $1 billion richer following the news that Facebook's $5 billion fine for the biggest scandal in the company's history. And I had actually heard about this. This was actually pretty interesting, where I guess when you're a company that is in some trouble, luckily Computer America never had to be in that position. And really, if you're earning $20 billion a year, this really isn't even that bad of a position to be in. But I guess when they're in trouble, Facebook set aside money already to pay the fine. And they had set aside, I think, $5 billion to cover the fine, where they were estimating, because the fine from the from the FTC had not come down yet, and they were estimating it to be anywhere from $3 to $5 billion. So they set aside the high end of the estimate, $5 billion, and they were waiting. They were sitting on their hands and waiting. Obviously, all this having to do with Facebook's Cambridge Analytica scandal, which wasn't really a scandal. I can't believe they're actually paying for this, but they're not paying enough is really one point that they're trying to make here. But the news, again, is that they set aside the $5 billion. The Federal Trade Commission came in at $5 billion, which was the high end of the estimate. Now, you may be wondering, why does that sound like such a good thing for Mark Zuckerberg? And it's a good thing because it was within their estimate. Even though it was on the high end, it was within it, and therefore Facebook shares actually went up because they accurately estimated what they were going to be paying the fine for. So they had the money set aside, they paid it right away, or at least they are going to pay it. I'm not sure if they've actually paid it, but all the financial figures, everyone who really pays attention to the stock of Facebook, they were all very, very happy that they accurately judged how much it was going to be. It was not over, and I'm sure it would have been even better if it was even under, but it was not over, and therefore stocks rose by actually 1% following the landmark fine. And by the way, that was kind of the thing last Friday when we heard about it, was that the FTC was like, hey, this is the most that the FTC has ever fined a company. $5 billion. Could you imagine? And now looking at it again, they paid, or they're going to pay it. It's really not going to be an issue. It doesn't even begin to touch the amount of profit that they actually made. And on top of that, Mark Zuckerberg himself, because of how many stocks or how many shares that he owns through Facebook, he actually earned about $1 billion after news that he was being fined $5 billion. And by the way, he does not pay that $5 billion. He mentioned that he was probably going to contribute some of it to himself. But yeah, hey, I guess when you own 88.1% of Facebook shares, it's not that much of a dent. So he said that as Facebook's primary shareholder, Zuckerberg can see a huge windfall from a stock price increase of just 1%, saying that the $5 billion FTC fine is intended to punish Facebook for mishandling user data and presumably not to increase the wealth of Facebook's primary shareholder. Facebook could not be reached for immediate comment, and the fine is a record, but again, so it's a record, and again, it's for mishandling of user data, but it's really not that much. It's actually a slap on the wrist for a social media company as large as Facebook. So they have a Business Insider, Rob Price, put it last week. For the last year, the FTC has been investigating Facebook's various privacy snafus. The agency started with a probe into whether Cambridge Analytica's misappropriation of 87 million user data amounted to a data breach, amounted to a breach that the company consent decree with. It later expanded the inquiry to incorporate the California tech giant's myriad of other privacy scandals. And overall, they've now settled this whole thing. It was, $5 billion. And like I said, they planned for it. They had the money set aside, and the fine was not bigger than they estimated. Therefore, the shareholders, or I should say, the people who run the finances were happy with Facebook. Which is kind of shocking that you could be fined the biggest fine ever to be fined by the FTC and you make a lot of money. So there you go. Okay. So that is so that's the Facebook story. Again, very counterintuitive, but I found that very interesting. Let's go ahead and, hey, this is actually Facebook as well. And yesterday, if you were listening to our computer and technology news segment, we talked about Libra. Libra, if you have not heard of it, is Facebook's attempt to get into the cryptocurrency space, where they have a ton of different partners, everyone from MasterCard to Microsoft to many PayPal included. Many other companies, tech companies, are looking to get in with Facebook into providing its own form of currency. So this would be pinned to the US dollar, but at the same time, think back everything you know about a cryptocurrency and just realize that Facebook would be the one running it. Privacy concerns abound. Not the FTC, but the US Treasury had concerns about this. And of course, there is legislation being proposed that would ban Facebook from actually implementing this, because it turns out you don't want Facebook, which is not a bank, not a central bank, not any kind of financial institution. They wouldn't have to operate as a financial institution with regulation and oversight and money laundering, that kind of thing. They could operate as a bank, but they would not have any of the protections of other, that are offered by the government to run the other banks. Now, the point is, one of their partners was a Swiss group that said that they were supposed to be overseeing the privacy of Libra, and they said that they have not heard from Facebook at all. Does this mean that Facebook lied? No, it just means that, hey, the flowing of communication seems to be, not really there. Maybe they didn't add each other on Facebook. I'm sorry. Swiss group that's supposed to oversee privacy for Libra says it hasn't heard from Facebook at all. That's the name of the article, CNBC, and that this is by Elizabeth Schulz. So here we go. Saying that Facebook said on Tuesday that Switzerland's data protection agency will oversee data and privacy protections for its new cryptocurrency, Libra. And by the way, just real quick, one of the reasons that Facebook is trying to do this is that no one trusts Facebook with their data anymore. So the more that Facebook can offload, the more they can say that this separate organization, this company, these partners, this XYZ, they're going to be handling everything as far as as far away from Facebook as Facebook can get this cryptocurrency, I think they feel like the more likely it is to pass. Therefore, they're giving oversight to other organizations and things like that. Well, check this out. But Facebook hasn't reached out to the Swiss regulator, a spokesperson told CNBC. In his testimony before the Senate, David Marcus, the head of Facebook's digital currency project, said for the purpose of data and privacy protection, the Swiss Federal Data Protection and Information Commissioner will be the Libra Association's privacy regulator. And again, hasn't even been contacted yet. So we'll get to the bottom of this, everyone. We'll finish up this article, and we have plenty more. Everyone, stay tuned. More Computer America right after this. Everyone, we'll be right back.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. That's 800-215-4461.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
And welcome back to the Computer America Show. It is 32 minutes past the hour, and everyone, if you missed any part of our conversation so far, please feel free to go wherever podcasts are heard, type in Computer America, and we should pop right up with today's entire show and all of our previous shows. You can catch up on Computer America or Time Shift Us, take us with you on your commute, whatever it is that you feel is the best way or best time to catch us. If you can't catch us live here, 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. Now, everyone, let's go ahead and continue on. Let's go ahead and finish this article, and then we're going to go ahead and kind of move to AT&T. But as I said before the break, we were discussing the fact that Facebook's supposed appointee to be the oversight and the privacy regulator for their new cryptocurrency, Libra, who they named was the Swiss Federal Data Protection and Information Commissioner, turns out never actually contacted by Facebook. I guess they just assumed that, that he'd do it. So asked about the agency's role in regulating Libra, Hugo Weiler, head of communication at the FDPIC, said in a statement, quote, "We have taken note of the statements made by David Marcus, chief of Calibra, and on our potential role as data protection supervisory authority in the Libra context. Until today, we have not been contacted by the promoters of Libra. We expect Facebook or its promoters to provide us with concrete information when the time comes. Only then will we be able to examine the extent of our legal advisory and supervisory competence is given. In any case, we are following the development of the project and public debate. So essentially they're saying they're willing to do it as soon as they receive more information. It's just they haven't even been told what's up. There you go. So continuing on here, so while the FDPIC would handle data privacy issues, the Swiss Financial Markets Supervisory Authority would be the main financial regulator of Libra. So there you go. Which makes sense. If you haven't been paying attention to the Swiss, and who the heck has, but the Swiss have been lately really gung-ho about cryptocurrency. They're, obviously the Swiss banking system is very well known for their ability to conduct Swiss bank accounts and things like that are really kind of free from extrajudicial review and, and international inquiry, things like that. Having Swiss bank accounts has always been kind of that cliche of, here's where I hide my assets. They're in a Swiss bank account and no one can touch them. Turns out cryptocurrency was very attractive to these kinds of people, and they're very interested in being the head of cryptocurrency. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and leave it there. I look forward to seeing if they actually take up this mantle, because getting in cahoots with Facebook, don't get me wrong, will probably pay very well. It's just such a massive headache that I'm not sure anyone is going to be willing to touch it. So there's that one. And actually, let's go ahead, speaking of headaches, switch over to the Electronic Frontier Foundation and how they're actually suing. Yeah, the EFF. I know, they seem like such nice people, but they are taking legal action against AT&T for selling customers' location to none other than bounty hunters. I'm sure you've seen the TV shows. You know what bounty hunters are. People who are running from the law for one reason or another. And yeah, it looks like AT&T has been illegally selling them data. So this is from Vice, and today the Electronic Frontier Foundation, who by the way have been on the show, filed a class action lawsuit against AT&T and 2 data brokers over the sale of customers' real-time location data. The lawsuit seeks an injunction against AT&T, which would ban the company from selling any more customer location data and ensure that any already sold data is destroyed. Although, as we've known with the internet, once something is out there, it's kind of hard to get it back in the bottle. But the move comes after multiple motherboard investigations found that AT&T, T-Mobile, Sprint, and Verizon sold their customer data to so-called location aggregators, which then ended up in the hands of bounty hunters and bail bondsmen. It sounds like you need to go after these location aggregators. I don't know what role they actually play other than showing other people where you are. And I don't know why. Well, of course, it's very obvious why they would want real-time location data is so that they could sell your real-time location data to other people. I'm just not sure why that's something that could be allowed. So they have a quote here saying that to sell this information without any notification to users is deceptive, extraordinarily invasive of their privacy, and illegal. And that is the lawyer who brought the suit up on behalf of the EFF towards AT&T. So they focus on this impact in California and represents 3 Californian AT&T customers, and they were unaware that the company sold access to their location. The class action complaint says that the 3 didn't consent to the sale of their location data. And by the way, if you think that, it's probably buried in their terms of service, it's probably in the fine print, so on and so forth, multiple times, judges have ruled that those terms of service that you click to get to use a product, either something that you sign through AT&T or something when you first boot up your phone and you hit agree or something like that, those are actually not legally binding because they know that, yes, you're hitting okay, but no one actually reads those things. So even though companies have tried time and time again saying, well, of course, we're not at fault here, they signed the waiver, they hit OK on the terms of service. Turns out that's not an ironclad argument. It's actually been struck down multiple times. So they actually probably do have a case here. So they have a quote here. Had plaintiffs known about the real-time location practices complained of herein, they would not have signed up for the AT&T wireless cell phone service or would have paid less for its services. Which makes sense, if nothing else. AT&T is receiving money from you, and then on the back end, they're selling your data about you to then make even more money on your data, which you would think would at least be would subsidize the use of your phone, but it's not. So they mentioned that the complaint alleged that AT&T violated the Federal Communications Act by not properly protecting customers' real-time location data, and that the California Unfair Competition Law and the California Consumers Legal Remedies Act for misleading its customers around the sale of such data. So the article goes on for a bit here. As always, Vice and Wired have very, very well-researched articles. But let's just go ahead and jump down to the response, saying in response to the lawsuit, AT&T argued customers have no right to sue over the sale of location data because of a forced arbitration clause in its contract, saying that T-Mobile made a similar case in a court filing. Like I said before, though, even though it's in the terms of service, it's in the fine print, it's in that thing that you don't read and you just hit OK, however it is that they entered this contract, it might not be enforceable in the court of law. So I'm looking forward to see where this goes, because this has pretty severe implications for, as they say, tens of millions of AT&T customers, and even beyond that, hundreds of millions of people who use cell phones. Think about everyone who uses a smartphone. Only about 95% of Americans. So this is going to affect everyone, and I'm actually pretty interested to see where this goes. Now, there's that article. Let's go ahead and continue on here. Let's see. So how about we talk about... Not that one. All right. Let's discuss... You know what? No, we're going to delete that one. Alphabet. Google, we've talked about Facebook, we've talked about Tesla, we've talked about all of the greatest hits. Let's go ahead and talk about Alphabet. Check this out, Alphabet Wing. This is a new division of the parent company of Google. If you are not familiar with Alphabet, they own Google and Gmail and all of the other Google services. They're under the umbrella of Alphabet. Now, Alphabet's Wing introduces an air traffic control app for drones, which is sorely needed. Drones are, of course, becoming a bigger and bigger problem. They are being used by commercial entities and private entities. Lots of different uses for drones. And before it becomes too much of a problem, we got to figure out how we're going to coordinate all these things. Now, this spring, Alphabet subsidiary Wing LLC became the first drone delivery company to receive FAA certification, and the company has successfully launched a drone delivery service in Australia, as well as Helsinki. Now, with more drones in the sky, it needs a way to keep them safe. And today, Wing formally introduced OpenSky app, which could serve as an air traffic control system for drones. Like I said, very much needed. The free app is available in Australia and works with both iOS and Android. It's meant to help drone operators comply with aviation rules and plan flights safely and effectively. The Australian version includes a checklist with a range of critical factors, including airspace restrictions, hazardous situations, and proximity to airports and heliports. It would also alert users to emergency response situations and things like nearby sporting events. Eventually, OpenSky will introduce voice capabilities to make the platform even more accessible. Wing isn't the only company working on an air traffic control platform. NASA, yes, that NASA, has spent 4 years working on a system, and starting next year, all DJI drones will detect and warn of nearby airplanes. Even Ford has proposed a drone tracking system, but Wing's relationship with Alphabet and all the location data Google owns, it could have an advantage. So, like I said, this is something that is sorely needed. I'm curious to see what finally shakes out. I think drones being in consumers' hands, even though we've crossed that border a number of times about drones being creepy, drones being used to spy on people, drones being dangerous by flying over sporting events, drones being a nuisance by getting too close to airports and having to shut down entire flights and delaying flights, and people just not getting to where they're going. Even with all these negatives, I think consumers having access to drones overall is a very good thing. We just need to make sure that they actually do it right. So there you have it. Now, let's go ahead and continue on here. Our next story that we're going to be talking about is, it seems like an FCC, FTC regulatory kind of day. Let's cover this one real quick. Not going to dilly-dally on this too long, but this is from Ars Technica, Mr. John Brodkin, talking about the FCC gives ISPs another, check this out, and when I say this number, you have to remember, this is your money. If you're an American taxpayer, at least, this is your money. The Federal Communications Commission gives ISPs another $563 million to build rural broadband networks, saying that tens of millions of Americans still don't have broadband network, or I should say broadband internet. More than 220,000 unserved rural homes and businesses in 24 states will get broadband access because of funding authorized yesterday by the Federal Communications Commission. The agency said in all, the FCC authorized more than $563 million for distribution to ISPs over the next decade. It's the latest payout from the Commissioner's Connect America Fund, which was created back in 2011. Under the rules, ISPs will receive funding. That receive funding must build out 40% of the required homes and businesses within 3 years, and an additional 20% each year until completing the build out at the end of the 6th year. The money is being distributed, and they have a huge list of states here that are going to be affected. And essentially, looking at the list here, it's almost, 24. It's half the states. It would be just as quick to name not the states. They said that Verizon, which is getting $18.5 million to service almost 8,000 homes and businesses in New York, is the biggest home internet provider on the list. Funding in 23 states was described in one FCC announcement, and the New York funding was detailed in a separate announcement. All the ISPs committed to providing speeds of at least 25 megabits per second downstream and 3 megabits per second upstream, which, by the way, 3 megabits per second upstream, still atrocious. 25 megabits per second downstream, for a household of more than one or two, still atrocious. I think the average that we're looking at nowadays, and this is a problem that we run into a lot, I'm pretty sure the average is closer to 40 or 50 nowadays, with where I want to say the upload speed is closer to 20 megabits per second. And when this fund was probably set up back in 2011, those speeds were very competitive. 25 and 3, not half bad. But nowadays, I'm glad that they're actually aiming for higher speeds of 100 megabits per second, 20 megabits per second upload, or 1 gig 500. That would be even better. So you can see in the announcements, kind of who gets it, where's it going, and who's going to get what speed. So, about 21.3 million Americans lack access to fixed broadband with speeds of at least 25 megabits per second download, but the true number without broadband access may be much higher, as a Microsoft analysis found that about 162.8 Americans do not use the internet at broadband speeds. Wow, that's like half. It's like half. The discrepancy is likely due to several factors, including ISPs not delivering promised speeds, ISPs charging too high for poor people to afford, and problems in FCC data that exaggerate deployment levels, which we've seen all of those. After many complaints about the data, Ajit Pai has proposed a new mapping initiative that could show a more accurate picture of broadband deployment. So there you have it. If you're listening to this and you say, wow, Ben, I can't even get 25 megabits per second, I'd be happy with just that, you're not alone. Because I guess 162.8 million Americans don't get that either. That's just crazy. Really, and really, if you live outside of the suburbs or a large city, it makes sense. Because running the infrastructure for 10,000 houses, you can make your money back from that immediately. But if you're a private for-profit company, such as Verizon or AT&T or Charter or whatever, if you have to run one line for maybe 10 houses, if not a single house, you are never going to make your money back off of laying down the fiber optic it would take to get that person internet. It's just the economics of it. A lot of these rural Americans will never receive broadband internet unless it's subsidized by the U.S. government. It's just sadly how that breaks out. So there you go. So there's that story. And again, another $563 million to rural broadband. Okay, how about we talk about... All right, let's get a little bit more lighthearted here, something that I actually enjoy in my spare time whenever I get some time. For video games, they tend to come and go. Being, sitting down, watching a video game, it's hard to keep up the excitement, but it looks like Blizzard is trying their very best with Overwatch and Overwatch League, which is their esports division of their video game, saying that Blizzard reveals Overwatch League details for 2020. Let's go ahead and breeze through this and, saying that Overwatch League fans who might have been hoping for a traditional home and away format similar to other sports in which teams play half their games at their own venue might be disappointed, at least for the 2020 season. Blizzard has revealed the league format for next year, in which regular season matches will take place in teams' home bases. Each team will host 2 weekend-long homestands, and franchises from each division will collaborate on 3 more regular season events in their home regions. In total, 52 homestand weekends will take place. Makes sense? 2 local events will run simultaneously throughout the season, which will take place between February and August. Each franchise will again play 28 regular season games, so the news might come as a blow to fans who had been hoping to see their teams play up to 14 games on their home turf, which won't happen. So the new Overwatch League commissioner and president and CEO of Activision Blizzard, Peter Vlastelica, told ESPN, part of the reason for this is to ensure that we get as many people as possible into these venues. We're optimizing for big sold-out crowds because it's our first year. We don't know how many big sold-out crowds a market can support yet. So the league is splitting into 4 divisions, with each conference dividing in half. Teams will play other squads in their own conference twice, and franchises from other conferences once. Based on what Blizzard has revealed, it seems likely more teams will join Overwatch League next year. It's pretty exciting. Blizzard will reveal the full 2020 regular schedule next month, but this format is only set in stone for 2020. Blizzard is likely to tweak the setup for future seasons based on how 2020, kind of works out. So, teams will be responsible for finding and running their venues, while the league will take care of broadcast. Only one team has a confirmed venue next year, with the Los Angeles Valiant will host other teams at the 7,100 capacity Microsoft Theater. Philadelphia Fusion will play in a custom-built venue from 2021, and venues for the mid-season and the playoffs have yet to be revealed. So essentially saying, quote, "This is a step we're taking to make sure that we get long-term vision. In the end, the bridge format solution was overwhelmingly popular with our team owners, and that helped confirm that it was a good move. It's more efficient and cost less." Which, when you're trying to start up esports, basketball, baseball, football, all these other franchise sports, that you know and love, they've all had their costs kind of sunk decades ago. Everything has been paid for, and of course there's always continuing maintenance, updating the venues. Hey, baseball, if you're listening, building safety nets for foul balls and things like that. There's always ongoing expenses, but a lot of the expenses for building stadiums and whatnot, that's already been done for a long, long time. For esports, this is something completely new. It's it's still finding its audience. It's still seeing if this is even possible, and if it's possible, well, as Blizzard sees it, how big can it even be? So they're trying their best in 2020. I'm sure they're hoping it grows even beyond this format for 2021. But we'll definitely have to wait and see. Now, we have time for just one more article. Let's go ahead and talk about... Okay. No, definitely don't want to talk about that one. Let's talk about this one. Okay. I'll bite. So I really like Warcraft. Warcraft has been something of a passion of mine for, ever since I was like 3 or 4 years old. And, just the franchise has been around since the 90s, and it's great. But looks like Warcraft lost one of its titles, and, I'm actually not that upset. I'm not that upset about it because it lost to another great franchise. Detective Pikachu, yes, the movie, surpasses Warcraft as the highest grossing video game film of all time. That's right, where the live action Pokemon movie takes the crown with $436 million. Where Detective Pikachu, the live action mystery movie from Warner Brothers, has surpassed Duncan Jones' Warcraft as the highest grossing video game film of all time, with again $436 million in ticket sales. So they said that Warcraft, which is of course based on Blizzard Entertainment, was previously the record holder, and when it ousted the Prince of Persia: Sands of Time with its $433 million worldwide gross, now again Warcraft's success at the time was largely thanks to the enormous market in China. However, neither of these films came close to Detective Pikachu's critical reception. Not only is the film the highest earning video game ever, it is also the best received. And hey, earned pretty well. So they currently hold about 67% on Rotten Tomatoes, so on and so forth. So the good news for Nintendo, game studio Game Freak, and merchandising license company Creatures, all three of these have equal stakes in the Pokemon franchise. So the end result is that the complex corporate structure is that everyone won out when both the game and the film became commercial successes. So it makes perfect sense that Warner Brothers and Legendary are now looking to make a sequel. If you didn't know that, looks like Detective Pikachu is indeed going to be getting a sequel. So that's good, right? Right. So I don't think we have any more time to get into some of these other articles. So some of the articles that we didn't talk about include the ever so popular conversation about pleasurable devices being permitted at CES, which, by the way, we talked about that when it was a big controversy back in January of this year. CES had always allowed devices such as that in the show. It was just to actually receive an award No, they weren't allowed. But now, turns out next year, they will be allowed to do exactly that. Also, how Julian Assange had turned the Ecuadorian embassy into a command center for election meddling. We did not talk about that one. And another one on top of that was an open letter to the FTC on Google's banning of repair business ads. Ladies and gentlemen, that's about all the time we have for today. I want to thank you so much for tuning in to the show. I hope we had fun, and of course, you're looking forward to tomorrow's show. Unfortunately, Computer America will not be on tomorrow with a live show. I have some personal matters to attend to, so we will probably be playing a best of, which will be Ralph Bond, actually. Yeah, Ralph Bond from last Friday. If you didn't catch that, it was a very fun show, and we look forward to sharing that again. So we'll be back Thursday, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern, and we'll be back with more guests, more correspondence, and just more everything. Hey, thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, have a great day. Thank you. Again, Thursday, but tune in Wednesday. You're going to like it. Everyone, we'll catch you then. Bye-bye.